Phil, how you doing today?
Hello, Dave. I'm fine. How you been?
Oh, I'm doing all right.
Good. All right is good.
Some parts all right.
Okay.
How have you been?
Okay, most parts.
That's good.
I'm alive.
Yeah?
I don't weigh 416 pounds, but I'm trending.
Well, Big Show didn't weigh 416 either.
What are your thoughts coming up as far as XFL goes?
Well, part of me kind of wants it to succeed only because I think it'll serve to expose networks for how desperate they've become for ratings, that they'd sell anything, that there's absolutely no value judgments put on anything. There's no moral dilemma anymore for these people. If it sells, they're going to put it on. They don't really give a rat's tail what it is. I think it'll help if it succeeds, and if it's presented the way McMahon and company have strongly hinted it'll be presented. I think it'll serve to expose McMahon to another layer of people in this country who don't necessarily watch wrestling. I think it'll expose the National Broadcasting Company, its parent company, General Electric. I imagine that at the next stockholders meeting, if it's as vulgar and violent as they promised it will be, I imagine the stockholders will stand up and finally say something. I think it'll expose Robert Wright, the president and CEO of NBC, who 10 years ago wrote me a letter saying, keep up the good fight as it relates to the maltreatment of women by athletes and by the sports genre. Keep up the good fight. I'm with you all the way. And now he's sitting there suggesting that the XFL is quote-unquote edgy. Edgy to me is a synonym for vulgar, and that it's over the top, which is another synonym for we have no shame. So I think it might actually prove that McMahon's bitten off more than he can chew this time, and then it might just be a total flop from the outset.
It's
By
really
the way,
hard
they're worrying about people's behavior they're worrying about drawing people to outdoor stadia in the Northeast and in the North in the winter in February. I'm wondering what the parking lot scene's going to be like. I think we both know there's that message that anything goes, and it's not that NFL games currently feature a well-behaved crowd. Quite the contrary, it's getting worse and worse. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting only because I think it's going to undress a lot of people for what they are. Because let's face it, there's a lot of people who think that pro wrestling's still about, Argentina Apollo and Bruno Sammartino, really haven't taken the time to check what wrestling's become. And that would include our new president, George W. Bush, who has embraced this organization. And I'm sure if he sat in public and placed a tape of the WWF into a television set, he could not stand up and say that he blesses this either politically or socially.
Well, it depends on the week, because WWF is, as all wrestling is, and I guess a lot of entertainment, they're playing a game that, because there's so many stations and everything's so fragmented, everyone is far more desperate for audience. The networks certainly are more than ever before. And if something can deliver like a good share of the audience, they're willing to take a lot more heat,
Clearly.
Yeah.
Clearly.
And in the case of the WWF, it's a funny thing because certainly one of the things they did in building a comeback was get really, really raunchy, and then the advertisers rebelled, and then they have kind of gone on this thing where they go kind of back and forth. Some weeks they're somewhat tame, some weeks they're very tame, then other weeks they'll bounce back and be somewhat raunchy, and it's one of those things where I think that they're trying to appeal to everyone. They're trying to appeal to the idea that we've cleaned up, but then they also don't want to lose that audience that kind of got into the WWF for the idea that it's anything goes entertainment.
We both know, though, that if they ever were to back off on a continuum, they'd lose audience. They'd move less product.
It depends on what I mean.
I think they've kind of promised this. They've kind of promised this audience that stay tuned. You're gonna be shocked next week even more than the previous week, and if not the next week, maybe the week after that.
Yeah, but it's not as it's not what it was. Say,
Well, it's certainly not
1999.
wrestling.
Yeah, it's not what it was in 1999 though. 1999 was the nadir, the low point as far as the real raunchy period of the WWF, and now, again, there's things that they touch and things like that, but it's not
SmackDown this past Thursday, whole thing with mayonnaise on Trish Stratus or
there's
dip or
stuff,
whatever that was.
Yeah, there's stuff, no doubt about it, but it's not like in '99 when Russo was writing WWF.
Right.
Without question, every week was, can you top this? How far can we go without being practically kicked off the air?
Right.
And of course, it resulted in advertisers rebelling. Once the advertisers rebelled and Russo left, it's. I guess I'm just saying.
What was created, Dave? I'm sorry, I don't know your guest here. Is that a co-host?
Oh, it's Brian Alvarez.
Oh, Brian, hi.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm sorry. I think what it's created is that executives, both advertising and network, it's created a new strata of rationalization. They don't have to answer these questions anymore. They can just say, well, it's no worse than this. They can repeat what the nonsense that McMahon says, that, it's no worse than what they see on soap operas, what we see in nighttime dramas, what people see in the movies. It's always, well, it's no worse than this, it's no worse than that. And but they can never say, well, it's better than something. It's never better than anything. It's always no worse than. And as we've discussed in the past, Dave, they can say it's no worse than The Sopranos. It's no worse than, and I think it is worse. And they can say it's no worse than daytime soap operas. But clearly, The Sopranos and daytime soap operas don't rely on an audience of minors. Let's face it, there's no Sopranos toys that were Days of Our Lives toys that predominate aisles in Toys R Us stores.
Yeah. I want to make mention that Bill Goldberg was on Bubba the Love Sponge. Did you hear about this one, Brian?
No.
This morning. He's basically doing an angle, but everyone's taking it seriously, where he said that, he's got an out clause in his contract and he's thinking about going to the WWF and all that good stuff. Bubba the Love Sponge news.
That's a good angle, Barry, his own company.
Isn't it the only angle left?
It's the only angle that they do. He goes, he's got an out clause in his contract, and he, because of the sale, which I don't believe is the case, because I believe that every contract that they bought was transferable, and that was part of the reasons of buying it. And it's just they're doing a thing where Goldberg's retired, and they're trying to get the angle over, and just like, I don't know. What are you gonna do? Let's see. There was something else in here about this is someone who goes that they had some XFL practice games over the weekend, although I haven't heard anything more about them. Oh, okay, this was the other thing. WCW has taken down Ming's bio on its website and also has removed the entire hardcore title history from its website. So that's pretty good. Let's see what else.
Took the whole division with him.
Yeah, I guess so. Phil.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you some more about the Playboy article. Have you read the whole Playboy article?
No, I have it. I just when I of course I turned to the spot that was highlighted for me. It's about me, and it just seemed like more of the same. I mean, how many more quotes from Vince McMahon can I read without sitting there shaking my head and wondering why the interviewer would accept any of his answers?
Yeah.
I have it.
I mean, do you have any comments on that?
Pictures.
What?
I just looked at the pictures as I always do with Playboy.
What? I mean, as far as like you've written some stuff as far as the XFL and some of the dangers and everything like that. I mean, one of the things that that kind of scares me, I guess, about the league. Not really about the league, because I know that a lot of what McMahon is saying is just to garner attention. He's trying to make himself out to be this badass guy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're promising people a more violent game. So
Right.
they have to deliver something like that. And yet the injury rate in the NFL is already pretty scary. And they're talking about, the players are pansies and protecting the quarterback and this and that. And the fact is that as anyone who follows football, and I don't even follow it that close, knows quarterbacks go down in far too much frequency in the NFL rules game. So if anything, you would want him. You would not want
so
him.
Much more violent than it's ever been. That it's beyond the pale. Football, professional football. There was always that promise that you were going to enter midlife as an arthritic, and as a severe arthritic. But never before, except for maybe the last 10 years, has the promise existed that you were going to enter midlife as both an arthritic and as a neurologically impaired ex-football player, that you were going to suffer brain damage. The incidence and preponderance of concussions is off the charts now, almost so that the current form of National Football League play is almost indefensible. And yet Vince McMahon is telling the world, and NBC's allowing him, which is just another part of the sellout, that you're probably sick of that girly pants football you're watching. And meanwhile, here's Troy Aikman, who'll probably never play again, Steve Young, Al Toon, Merrill Hodge, over and over. There are players who were retiring before the age of 30 because when someone flips the lights on in their house, they get excruciating headaches and start to have blackouts from the multiple concussion syndrome.
We're finding that more in professional wrestling as well, with the chair shots to the head and the more dangerous stunts that they're doing in the ring. Bret Hart, Vampiro, a lot, and just a lot of. It's not even the
kids who emulate pro wrestling. They're emulating. They've ratcheted up the danger elements. They're jumping off roofs now.
Well, that's.
And then Vince McMahon has the gauze. This is where people swallow stuff without thinking. Just this whole election thing, where people would say, when McMahon would say, I control 16 million viewers.
Actually,
16 million voters.
Actually, he said 14 million voters.
14,
was that number, Brian?
I think it was 14 million registered voters.
14 million registered voters.
Right.
Now, people from Time Magazine to my own publication, the New York Post and TV, would write this willy-nilly. They would take it. It was beyond. It was beyond the. It was just ridiculous. And he registered 150,000 voters. How does anyone know that? Was there a registration booth down
the block? I think it's a million voters now, by the way.
WWF voter registration here? It was nonsense. And people just, anything he says, people will repeat. Look at the facts. I read recently that the Memphis team, is there a Memphis team in the XFL?
Memphis Maniacs.
They have you can go to their website and punch into something called cheerleaders taking a shower.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I don't know I'm not going to give that thing a hit. But Harvey Arrington in the New York Times wrote a column that he pretty much decrying the whole morass, said the Memphis XFL. You hit the thing, you go into a video to watch cheerleaders taking a shower. Well,
the whole thing is that is what they're trying to market the league on, is the cheerleaders. Even in the commercials, it's the commercials are very much based on the cheerleaders and being suggestive and things like that, and. But that's their calling card because they can't compete with the level of football, nor is anyone suggesting that they can. So they're trying to compete the way, you compete in professional wrestling. I
spoke with a guy, David and Brian, who told me, I don't know if I spoke with him or he called me after he did research. It wasn't in passing. It was a pointed conversation. Hey, did you hear this? And to paraphrase it, on behalf of his network, he looked into the individual insurance of the players in the XFL, and he referred to their policies as "quote-unquote" frightening.
I have read I've read in some business journals the same thing about the level of injuries that they're expecting with the rules that they're playing under, and then the insurance that they're using, which is far, far, far less than the NFL insurance, which is supposed to be a safer league. I have heard the same thing.
There's so much nonsense that's discussed that Vince McMahon would write to Governor Whitman in New Jersey and say, I support your efforts to rid society of extreme wrestling. And then they put this stuff out. Look, we have the support of Vince McMahon. And wait a second, does anyone look twice? The only guy anyone knows to have been killed in a ring in the last year was extreme wrestling for Vince McMahon. It wasn't even wrestling. It was being pushed or being asked to walk off a scaffold in the Kemper Arena.
Well, that's actually no. There have been other people killed in the ring in the last year and a half now.
But the most publicized one was Owen Hart.
Was obviously the most publicized. But there was Gary Albright and a couple of people.
Was he killed doing a stunt?
Fukuda. No, that's the only one from a stunt. Yeah, Gary Albright died of a heart attack, which actually was a hell of a because he had a cardiovascular disease and he'd been wrestling, and it really said something about the fact that wrestlers really should get EKGs because
yeah, right.
The ease of getting licensed.
Yeah, because he was in a non-commissioned state, and he was a big star in Japan. They obviously didn't do full complete physicals there because he had tremendous blockage of his arteries, and he was out there wrestling regularly on top in Japan. So.
Have you ever known a wrestling promoter to insist that a guy has a physical before he or she gets in the ring?
Only if the commission insists. Is that right, Brian? Do you know of any?
Yeah, in the
right,
commission states you have to get the physical, but you only get it once a year. So,
Once a year is better than nothing, though.
Yeah, it is better than nothing. But, I mean, they don't have you do the EKG or anything like that. It's just, basic blood pressure and just like a sports physical you'd get if you were doing football at high school or whatever.
Yeah, but that's how many states have that, actually? I mean, 'cause Oregon's the strictest state of all, and, Oregon realistically isn't half as strict as...
And they're not even really strict as far as checking to make sure someone's not going to die in the ring. They're just more strict with the whole, the drug issue, whether you're on drugs at the time of the physical.
Well, I understand if you're not on drugs, you're going to be suspended from the XFL.
That's a once a year thing too.
Yeah, that's the whole thing about that. It's like, okay, if someone's
like,
on something, they just go clean for a month or whatever, take their physical, and then do whatever they want for 11 more months.
Yeah, but even then, even with that, WWF and WCW won't come to the state.
Mm-hmm.
So.
What do you guys think of the XFL? I mean,
well, they haven't played a game yet, so I don't know.
But there's just a promotion. I mean, don't you? What do you think of all the shrinkage within the? Is McMahon getting what he wants and getting essentially a stranglehold on the pro wrestling industry? Is that in his best long-term interest? I mean, he has no. I mean, look at all the angles they worked off of other people's promotions. Look at all the competition.
I don't think it's
was good.
Anybody's long-term interest.
If you liked all the crap that pro wrestling had become vis-a-vis the World Wrestling Federation, they were inspired by competition. I mean,
I think one of the things that's really worried me about pro wrestling for this coming year is, I was afraid of what would happen to WCW, and probably still should be, because I certainly don't see an economic model that looks like it's going to work. I hope it does, but I don't see it now that Turner has sold. They don't have the, Brian wrote it real well. They don't, what's called, like they can't lose money anymore like the way that they have in other years because they don't have this giant corporation backing them up. They have to find a way to be economically solvent, and that company, out of the last 12 years, has only been has only made a profit in 2 of those years, I think. And ECW is pretty much all but dead. I mean,
well, you see that the guys, and you know better than I, the guys, Beat All and Steve Greenberg, they've promised a more, sanitized version of what the WC had become. I mean, can they compete that way? That's essentially surrendering before they've started.
I don't know. No more swearing and things like that. I mean, if they put on a great... It's a shock therapy. It's a shock industry. If you remove the shock, what have you got? You're back to wrestling. And we both know that wrestling doesn't sell as well as shock sells. Yeah, but we've seen so much shock that the WWF's almost had to go back to wrestling, too, just because, you've overloaded the shock to the point where nobody can be shocked. So
with Russo, it was like all shock and no wrestling, and that totally failed.
Yeah, because when Russo went to WCW, he ratcheted up the shock thing, and it basically did them an incredible amount of damage. I think it cost them the company as far as, he did more damage, I think, during his period because he just, I guess, ruined the base of wrestling. I guess is the way I put it. It's like what the fans want. I think the fans wanted a wrestling product that was good, and they kind of got into the shock because it was something new. But once they'd seen it, you kind of had to deliver the wrestling, and Russo didn't know how to switch gears when it came time to switching gears. And now I think the pendulum shifted back to where I think people want a good wrestling product, and the people who are only into it for the shock, those are the people that have dwindled the ratings already. I don't know.
Do you think that the average, let's say the 18-year-old viewer, wants to go back to wrestling? Because for the most part, he's never seen wrestling.
Yeah.
I mean, he can't go back to a place he's never been to. And if you hand this person wrestling, they say, what the hell is this? I want someone ripping the bra off of this woman. I want someone getting slammed over a table. I want somebody grabbing their crotch.
They do want that, but, all of that stuff's been eliminated in WWF is still, not totally eliminated. I mean, we saw Trish Stratus and a bra and all that on TV the other night and all that, but, as far as, grabbing the crotch, they pretty much banned that. They banned the suck it.
Yeah,
and
Dave,
yes.
you know better than I. It was just last August, right before the Republican National Presidential Convention, when Rock did an angle that's essentially about fellatio and cunnilingus, right there on Monday Night Raw.
Oh, yeah,
2 days later,
with the crotch in the head and all that, yeah.
As an honored speaker and guest. So I don't think they've lost anything. They might tone it down in degrees or by the week, but not on a continuum, because when their ratings start to slip, they're going to have to hand guys axes and they're going to have to chop each other's testicles off.
Well,
we almost had that angle once, actually.
They had
True. They're going to have to repeat that angle. You're right, Brian.
Well, made it from the sword.
I mean, I do remember that right before the convention when they had the 8-year-old kids chanting "Save the Hose," and then I was realizing that those people were going to be at the Republican convention in just a matter of days. There was some weird stuff there.
George W. Bush attending Vince McMahon's party tonight?
Do not know. Well, wasn't his party? Wasn't Vince's party the other night, like Friday night?
I thought it was tonight.
No, because they got Raw tonight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think they had a party at Club Insomnia in D.C. with Kurt Angle. I don't know if he went or not, actually. I don't know, Brian, did you hear anything about that?
No, I don't know.
No, but they did invite Kurt Angle to the inauguration and everything, which they in fact used as an angle. One thing that they did do, and I noticed with continuing with the SmackDown Your Vote, that they did get away with was it was supposed to be nonpartisan, and then the last
they made
day,
an endorsement.
they made an unofficial endorsement, but it was like a mistake.
And
it wasn't a mistake, but nothing's a mistake. They endorsed George Bush because the Republican Party had pandered to them, had gave them a national forum.
And also because Vince McMahon had a thing with Lieberman, because he considered Lieberman his enemy.
Of course he had but of course he had a thing with Lieberman. Well, where do you think Bozell votes? You think he's a registered Democrat? I don't. I think he's a registered Republican.
Bozell's a Republican, sure.
Of course he is. That's funny. The McMahon piece, he said, Phil Mushnick is so right-wing, and of course it gets written. Well, if they call me, I'm a registered Democrat. Not that I'm a left-winger. I consider my personal politics to be eclectic, but I'm a right-winger. I mean, he just says things. I mean, if you take everything he said, if you juxtapose his quotes over the last 10 years, you'll see that virtually every quote, has an antithetical statement that comes out of his mouth within a couple of days, within a couple of minutes, within the same interview. But people don't care. In the media today, if it's popular, they want to rub up against it. They want to be attached to it. There's just no moral decisions made. There's nothing right or wrong. It can't count for you. Everyone's got their money, their wallets before their morality. And I'm not here to preach to you, but I'm not surprised by any of this. There's a guy at the Post on the entertainment side who comes up to me and he slaps me on the back in the hall and he says, "Keep up the good fight. I can't even let my kids watch this." And yet when he writes about the WWF, it's always like in some delighted fashion. Like, hey, to the mat, slam, yay, whoopee, the beautiful China and this and that. And I look at him, I said, stop slapping me on the back, because you're a sellout.
What's funny? It was always funny to me when we're talking about like in the various periods where I would talk to reporters and they would be so appalled, and they would just be talking to me how appalled they were with the product or years before with the drug issue, and then they'll write the story, and
it's tame, and they rely on a Phil Mushnick or Dave Meltzer or even a Brian Alvarez to say, but McMahon's critics will say, and then they quote you because they can't make the value judgment. Am I right?
Yet in many cases it's right there. Certainly like on a drug issue. Okay, I mean, like the facts were all out there. The trial transcripts were all out there. I mean, it's obvious what the history of the company was and all that. And yet, like people would go to me and just go, and this is in the last couple of years, do you think there's still a steroid problem there? And it's like, well, let's see, the guys are more muscular than they were in the 80s, and all the evidence from the 80s was that everyone was on it, so what does that say? But
there is no more problem. They've stopped testing. The problem's gone. Well, not that they ever tested with any degree of sincerity.
Phil, anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
No, I'm kind of waiting. I wish I didn't have to sit here and monitor it, but it is a part of NBC Sports now. And just as I monitor the Extreme games for ESPN, I'm going to have to watch the XFL under the aegis of quote unquote sports writer.
Now, do you think he can deliver? Because Vince McMahon now has promised something that's got to be way wilder than the NFL. It has to be, or else he's going to disappoint people because of what he's built up.
And the NFL already has, a suspected murderer as its defensive player of the year. Yeah, so it's got to be wilder than that. Yeah, okay, I think he can deliver that. I think he can do whatever he wants. You think he can deliver it?
Because sometimes I'm thinking, everyone's going to tune into that first game, and they're going to go, well, gosh, it's just...
He's going to have to hit the ground running as it relates to raunch.
No, that's right. He's got to deliver those. To me, he's got to deliver those first 3 weeks. If he doesn't deliver those first 3 weeks...
He's got to send the message immediately. He has no room for a growth period. And, I've spoken to network PR at several of these networks that carry this stuff, and they aren't happy. If you see it at NBC, none of the regular staff people are part of this thing. He's keeping this, they don't want any part of it, and I guess they're grateful that he's not forcing them to. They've got this guy Vascarian or whatever.
Yeah.
Now if you see him on, the same guy on Fox Sportsnet who does Sports Geniuses, the guy has absolutely no qualms about being gutter side lewd. So he's perfect for them.
Phil, we gotta get running right now.
All right, fellas.
Okay, I want to thank you for doing the show.
Likewise, Dave. Give me a call when you get a shot.
Okay, I will do that.